Digging to survive. I can see hints. Chapter 121 to 140. Chapter 121. Head to the 62nd catacomb. A notification appeared in front of Klein. Dig up, there's only a pile of bones. Dig down, and you will see an earth dragon tomb. There are good things hidden in the private tomb. Stay outside the tomb and there won't be any danger. You can also search for an iron treasure chest. There are a lot of weeds in the back catacomb. Dig well and you will be able to dig out some wild fruits and an underground river that is about to dry up. Dig to the right. A werewolf troop is resting. They're carrying a batch of metals. If you rob them, you'll be able to harvest a batch of provisions. After browsing through the 4 directions, Klein could confirm that the geomagnetic pulse had indeed changed last night. The notifications in each direction had all changed. Earth Dragon Tomb. Klein didn't think too much and found a spot to dig down. If there was danger in the tomb, it could be more than that. It wouldn't be bad to obtain an iron treasure chest. Huff, huff, huff. After digging down for about 10 meters, he encountered a wall of air. No, it should be said to be a geomagnetic pulse. Klein tried to use the Firestorm Saber to cut through it. The Firestorm Saber, which could easily cut through rocks, produced sparks, but it didn't move at all. Even with the lightning crossbow and elemental missiles, it was still unable to cut through it. Klein could only change his route. He dug the tunnel and turned left. About 100 meters away, he touched the wall of air again. After a few consecutive turns, the downward black hole finally appeared. Klein carried Little Fox and Little Wind and entered the 62nd catacomb. It was 30 meters high. Klein quickly landed. In the air, he looked down. There were hills and rocks, but he couldn't find the so-called tomb. He could find the location of the iron treasure chest. It was on the hill. Klein landed and walked straight to the hill. There's the tomb of the Earth Dragon under your feet. The entrance seems to be nearby. Klein was taken aback, but he decided to open the treasure chest first. The inspection was flawless. He opened it. System notification. Iron treasure chest +1. System notification. Water rune +2. System notification. Wind rune +1. System notification. Milk fruit tree seed +2. System notification. Coffee tree seed +2. System notification. Black juice fruit tree seed +1. System notification. Perfect runic juicer blueprint +1. 3 types of seeds? Klein looked through them one by one. Perfect runic juicer blueprint. A daily use runic device. When the fruit is put in, the juice is squeezed in 3 seconds. Even if it's rubber, the last drop can still be squeezed out. There are still impurities in the juice. Milk fruit tree seed. Dwarf tree species. The fruit that grows out is rich in juice similar to milk. It's rich in protein. Coffee tree seed. Dwarf tree species. The leaves that grow out can be soaked in boiling water. It can be made into a cup of delicious coffee. It has a refreshing effect. Black juice fruit tree seed. Dwarf tree species. When the fruit ripens, you can peel off the skin and drink the juice like Coke. Good stuff. Milk, coffee, and Coke are all here. Klein decisively found an empty plot of land, opened up the runic base, and planted all the seeds. Last night, the first floor expanded into a greenhouse. The greenhouse was quite large. Planting, watering, and fertilizing. After he was done, he put away the base. Klein strolled over the hill, looking for his destination. Under your feet is the tomb of the Earth Dragon. The cave entrance seems to be nearby. Under your feet is the tomb of the Earth Dragon. The cave entrance seems to be nearby. Stop. Dig from here to the entrance of the Earth Dragon's tomb. Klein stopped. He dug it open in a few seconds. A pitch-black cave entrance appeared in front of him. A cold wind blew from within. This is the tomb of the Earth Dragon. It has already been excavated, but there are still some good treasures. Now that it has been occupied by a banquet, be careful of the sleepyhead it raises. Wear a gas mask and don't fall asleep, or you'll never wake up again. Klein immediately opened the illustrated handbook and read the information on the banquet and the sleepyhead. 2 results appeared. Banquet. A monster that can enter and exit dreams. It has wings and a long tail, a pair of sharp horns, and no facial features. In the real world, it likes to hide in the darkness. No light can reach it because it will devour the light. Ability. Dream infiltration. Weakness. No physical damage. Danger factor. 56. Ability query. Dream infiltration. Enter the target's dream and dominate the dream until the target dies. Sleepyhead. A kind of big fat worm that can emit a faint fragrance that can make creatures fall asleep. It doesn't have sharp teeth or claws. It must rely on its slender mouthparts to penetrate deep into the creature's mouth and nose to absorb nutrients when it eats. It often coexists with other crypt creatures. Ability. Sleepyhead fragrance. Weakness. Slow movement speed. Danger factor. 15. Ability query. Sleepyhead fragrance. A fragrance that can make a target fall asleep. Klein didn't know if the excellent gas mask was effective as the hint didn't specify it. But choosing the perfect gas mask was definitely the right choice. He opened the production list. He chose the perfect gas mask. He made 3. The design could still be customized. After Klein wore it, he put it on Little Fox and Little Wind. Follow me down. Klein took out the runic lamp and entered the pitch-black tomb. It was damp and cold inside. From the narrow passage at the beginning, it became more spacious as time went on. It could be seen that many places inside had been damaged. As expected, they have been excavated. Klein continued forward and saw many corpses along the way. Some were big and some were small, and they had different shapes. At that moment, Klein felt something shake in front of him. When the runic lamp shone on him, he couldn't see anything. Chapter 122. The ability to infiltrate dreams is just so-so. A banquet? Klein narrowed his eyes. I hope it doesn't come out looking for trouble. Klein didn't know if he could use a weapon or a charm to attack a banquet. The illustration described the banquet as incorporeal damage. It could be understood in 2 ways. First, the body is incorporeal, so there was no real damage. Second, the attack was soft, so there was no physical damage. If it was the first, Klein wouldn't be able to do anything to the banquet. The banquet wouldn't be able to deal with him either. He put on the gas mask and didn't fall for the sleepyhead. Without entering the dream, the banquet stared at him from the side. Klein raised the runic lamp and scanned the surroundings with a beam of light. He gradually saw the environment of the entire underground tomb. It was empty and filled with rock walls. The area was almost as large as the entire catacomb. Even if he didn't find an entrance, he would still find a tomb when he dug down. It's not as narrow as I imagined. The corpses on the ground aren't just funerary objects of the earth dragon. They're also crypt creatures that were eaten by the banquet. Klein took out the firestorm saber and fiddled with the corpses. Some of them were old and would shatter with a light touch. Some of them were humanoid corpses, while some were beast-shaped. Just one type of corpse was enough to identify dozens of species. Beast bones can be useful sometimes. Collect a batch. Klein took a few steps before turning back to collect them. The available resources were right beside his feet, and his habit of hoarding resources was back. In the past, when Klein played games, even if he knew that a resource wasn't very useful, he would always think of hoarding more. What if he could use it in the future? Other than sand, he could hoard everything else in the catacombs. I think it's about time. There's still a bit left. I might as well move all of it. Klein scratched his head and continued collecting. Little Fox and Little Wind, on his left and right, protected Klein, wary of the existence in the darkness. Their night vision was better than Klein's. Even so, they still couldn't find the location of the banquet. In other words, the banquet was nearby and they couldn't see it. Little Fox and Little Wind's night vision was strong because their eyes could receive faint light. If the banquet devoured even faint light, they naturally wouldn't be able to see the banquet. Done. Klein clapped his hands. The ground was clean. He felt comfortable. He continued to explore. Rather than calling this a tomb, it was more like a sealed nest. There were no traps like Klein had imagined. There was only emptiness and cold wind. Normally, if there was wind in a sealed environment, it meant that there was an air vent. The world of the catacombs was different. The sand could also be ventilated, so it was useless to seal the environment. The entire tomb was dark, which meant that most of the places were covered by the rock walls, so there was less light coming in. Phew! A gust of wind blew past him. It was beside him. Klein had a premonition, so he quickly adjusted the runic light mode. The light scattered. It illuminated the surroundings. Klein scanned the surroundings, but he still couldn't see anything. But He could already confirm the location. Under the light, a few meters away, there was a light forbidden area. It was like a black hole that devoured all the light around it. Klein raised his hand and quickly condensed a fire elemental missile. Go! The fire elemental missile flew straight at it. The restricted light zone moved quickly. A fire elemental missile landed on its body. Klein heard a low groan. It was obvious that it was injured. It can be injured? Klein was delighted. Since it wasn't an incorporeal body, everything was easy. He chased after it with large strides. He held the lightning crossbow in his hand. He pursued relentlessly. However, the banquet was easily hidden in the darkness, and it disappeared in a flash. Klein thought to himself, what a pity. If you follow this path, you will find treasures. A notification popped up in front of him. Klein had no choice but to give up. It was more important to find treasures first. As he continued forward, he didn't encounter any more accidents. At the end of the tomb, Klein saw a huge corpse. From the beginning to the end, it was 20 meters long. Just one skull was as tall as a person. Earth dragon bone. The remains of a powerful earth dragon after its death. It's extremely hard. Klein stored the earth dragon bones into the base piece by piece. The first level was definitely not enough, so he could only place them on the second level. After collecting all the earth dragon bones, Klein looked at the small icon in the upper left corner of the system interface. It changed from green to yellow. It meant that the runic base's available space had dropped below 80%. The sleepyhead is hidden behind the stone. When Klein was searching for the treasures in the tomb, he unintentionally swept past a large stone. If I can't deal with you, then I'll deal with your accomplice. He was certain that the sleepyhead had been emitting a fragrance. However, the sleepyhead in the banquet never expected that Klein would make sufficient preparations before coming down. The perfect gas mask completely countered them. Klein remained calm and deliberately went elsewhere. Suddenly, his right hand under the spell-casting cloak extended out. He threw out an elemental missile. Boom, boom, boom. The stone exploded. It revealed the sleepyhead's fat body. It was a meter long and chubby. It seemed to have received a fright. It shrieked and crawled as fast as it could. But it was still as slow as a turtle. Klein raised his hand and fired a few more fire elemental missiles. Pua, 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 all of them landed on the sleepyhead. Its body instantly exploded like lava. System notification. Soul +1. Chapter 123. No matter how small an item is, it's still better than nothing. Klein quickly walked forward and retrieved the remaining half of the corpse. No matter how small a mosquito was, it was still meat. In the darkness, an indignant roar sounded. Useless rage. Klein knew that it was the banquet. He didn't know where the fellow was hiding, but the voice was getting further and further away. It probably knew that it couldn't deal with Klein, so it could only flee in dejection. Without the banquet and the sleepyhead's entanglement, Klein's exploration of the entire tomb was smoother. Finally, he found a broken wooden box in a corner and buried it under the gravel. Klein confirmed that there was no danger before opening it. System notification. Broken wooden chest +1. System notification. Frostray charm learning scroll +1. System notification. Gold +30. System notification. Silver +30. System notification. Chalcedony +30. System notification. Epic Sand Soldier Horn, damaged, +1. Klein rummaged through the treasure chest. Among the first few items, he thought that the frost ray was a good item. When he flipped to the Sand Soldier Horn, his entire body trembled. Epic item. I actually found an epic item in the broken treasure chest. Klein's breathing quickened as he held the horn tightly. It was cold to the touch. His entire body was grayish-white. It was like a bull's horn. Epic Sand Soldier Horn, broken. It belongs to a combat rune device. Its original owner was the Desert Emperor. It shows a damaged state. It requires a special method to repair it. Using it now will consume soul power and can summon a group of broken sand soldiers. Klein looked left and right before putting the treasure away. Of the remaining items, the learning scroll was the most valuable. Frost Ray Charm Learning Scroll. Consumes runes to learn the scroll. When used, it will emit rays. It can quickly freeze objects. When it encounters a mirror, it will reflect. It needs to be used carefully. Learning requires the qualifications to have a charm bloodline. It requires 15 water runes, 15 wind runes, and 5 fire runes. Now that Klein had a pile of runes, he didn't hesitate to learn how to modify the scroll. There were no other treasures in the tomb, so Klein strolled around and left. It was unknown where the banquet was hidden until Klein walked out of the tomb. He didn't encounter it again. Klein walked out of the tomb. It was bright outside. He left the hill. When he turned his head, he didn't see the banquet following him. That's true. The banquet is smart enough to immediately realize that they can't deal with this once they see that the sleepyhead has been killed. They'll leave immediately. If they follow us out, their location will be easily exposed. They'll be down there. Most of the tombs are covered by rocks, and light can't enter. That's the best hiding spot for the banquet. Klein was wondering if the banquet would secretly follow them and wait until they slept before taking action. The banquet seemed to be clear-headed. Let's try a brand new charm. With this thought in mind, Klein waved his right hand. Shoo! A light blue beam of light flew out in the blink of an eye. It landed on a rock not far away. In just a moment, the rock froze into ice. Klein went forward to check. It was hard. It indicated that the ice layer was more than 10 centimeters long. It didn't form in an instant, but it spread out rapidly from the spot where it hit. The rock didn't move and wasn't big, so it condensed faster. It only took a second. If it was a living body, it wouldn't have watched itself freeze into ice. However, without the ability of fire, it would be extremely difficult to prevent it from gradually freezing. Klein thought for a moment and raised his hand to fire another elemental missile. A combination of wind and water elements. This combination of elemental missiles had a low temperature and also had a freezing effect. The elemental missile landed on another rock. A moment later, it only hit the spot and the surrounding area was frozen. The thickness of the ice layer was only half the thickness of the frost ray. Only when there was a comparison would there be a difference. When it comes to soul power consumption, the frost ray will be a little more. Klein thought of the characteristics of the frost ray and took out a crystal. It would reflect on the surface of the mirror. He wondered if the crystal would work. He pondered for a moment and retreated a little. Not only did light reflect, it would also refract. If he were to enter the crystal and accidentally produce a large amount of refraction, it would be asking for trouble if he and his pet were to be reflected. He retreated a little to give himself some time to react. Klein aimed at the crystal on the ground and shot another frost ray. Shoo! It landed on the surface of the crystal. Not only did the crystal quickly freeze, it also shot out a relatively weak frost ray. There was no refraction. The frost ray flew into the sky until it touched the earth wall 30 meters high. As it flew, the energy of the ray continued to decay. Only a portion of the earth wall was frozen. Klein thought for a moment before saying, "I understand. I can't use normal light to speculate. It should be fired at the mirror's surface. If that's the case, the surface of an ice block can also be considered a mirror." Klein cast a frost ray at the stone from before. Shoo! The frost ray landed on the surface of the ice block, deepening the ice layer, but at the same time, a portion of the frost ray was reflected. Klein tried a few more times and gradually grasped the pattern. Let's go to the next catacomb. Chapter 124. More people than me? Young. Klein didn't try the sand soldier horn. That was because there were no enemies nearby. He couldn't compare the strength of the sand soldiers. Klein looked at the 5 directions of the catacomb. Among them, there was the tomb of the Earth Dragon. The moment he lowered his head, he received a reminder that it was the tomb of the Earth Dragon. He needed to find a precise location to check. Continue digging down. There's only a pile of bones. Pick them up and boil some bone soup. It can also replenish calcium. In the catacomb ahead, a group of handrails are flying around aimlessly. In the catacomb ahead, there's a 7-colored fog floating. Absorbing it is beneficial to you. You have to be fast, or you'll be eaten by the werewolf squad. Dig to the left. There's nothing. Dig to the right. There are good resources to gather. Be careful of the werewolves that are lying in ambush. Out of the 5 catacombs, 2 of them had werewolves. Back in the previous catacomb, when Klein checked a certain location, there were werewolves as well. However, they were transporting metal. Is this a war between the werewolves and another side? Klein thought of the group of gnomes he had encountered previously. It was possible that the 2 sides were fighting. I'll dig backwards. There's nothing good in the other 4 directions. The main reason was to experience the 7-colored fog. With nothing good in the other directions, it was also a pleasure to explore. As Klein dug, he checked the information on the werewolf. Ability check, courage roar. A roar can increase the courage of a companion. It is ineffective against oneself. The danger level of a werewolf should be related to a group. Just like a kobold, an individual's strength would definitely be higher than a kobold. After all, it is tall. Klein didn't stop digging. Huff, huff, huff. A slightly curved passageway appeared. It was about 30 meters long. Before entering the catacomb, he checked again. The hint didn't change. This meant that the werewolves hadn't touched the rainbow fog, or they hadn't finished eating. Klein instructed and entered first. The 63rd catacomb. I'll use them to test out the abilities of the sand soldiers later. The moment Klein entered, he was immediately attracted by the werewolves not far away. There were more than a dozen of them, and they were making a pyramid. Each werewolf was close to 1.8 to 2 meters tall. The head of a wolf. Its entire body was covered in green-gray fur. Some parts were covered in armor, while the other party was standing to the side with all sorts of weapons. Discipline really doesn't work. Klein observed for a moment and came to a conclusion. It was also stupid enough. The werewolf wanted to catch the 7-colored fog floating in the sky. However, the werewolves below were clever. The moment their companions stepped on them, they immediately retreated silently, pushing their companions down before climbing up. Each and every one of them wanted to touch the 7-colored fog. Klein looked up at the 7-colored fog. It was like cotton candy. It had 7 colors. It floated in the air, and when a gust of wind blew over, it only moved its position slightly. It looked heavy and was firmly gathered together. After Klein appeared, the werewolves above him noticed him and began to howl and exchange words. It wasn't the underground common language, but the language of the werewolves. The werewolves temporarily gave up on the human pyramid. They landed on the ground one by one, picked up their weapons, and roared at Klein, as though warning him to leave. Klein smiled faintly and advanced instead of retreating. The distance between the two was more than 30 meters. A werewolf roared into the sky. This time, the group seemed to have been injected with stimulants. All the werewolves began to roar. They used their skills. Everyone charged forward. They had no discipline at all. They only cared about charging forward by themselves, and they didn't line up neatly. They didn't display the potential of a team at all. More than a dozen tall werewolves charged forward with their aura. Their momentum was menacing, and their formation was indeed frightening. Are they outnumbered? An ancient-looking horn appeared in Klein's hand. He could use the werewolf army to test the sand soldiers. Sand soldier horn. Although the item was damaged, it could be used. Klein expended his soul power to blow it. The sound of the horn reverberated in the catacombs. The werewolves that had been charging and roaring subconsciously slowed down after being shaken by the sound. Hum, 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 hum. The entire catacomb was trembling slightly. Whoosh. The sand around Klein squirmed. It continued to pile up. It condensed into a solid body. There were more than 20 of them. Klein only blew for a moment. The amount of soul power he expended far exceeded the amount he needed to use a charm once. If he wanted to calculate accurately, he could use Frost Ray 7 or 8 times. With one blow, the number of sand soldiers increased to 23. Their entire bodies were condensed from yellow sand. They were 1.8 meters tall. They held 2-meter-long yellow sand spears. They had capes behind them. Perhaps because they were damaged, the sand soldiers' facial features couldn't be seen clearly, or their facial features were distorted. The armor and spears on their bodies were also damaged. Damaged sand soldiers. Listen to the horn's orders. Discipline is strict. Lasts for 3 minutes. Form up, Klein said lazily. Kill the werewolves. With a command, 20 to 30 sand soldiers lined up in 2 rows at the fastest speed. They stood guard in front of Klein. They faced the werewolves' assault head-on. When the werewolves saw the sand soldiers, they were immediately intimidated. To have such means, they were obviously no ordinary characters. However, since they had already charged, it was impossible for the werewolves to retreat. Their discipline was indeed rubbish, but with the courage roar effect, they could only advance, not retreat. Even if they died, they would still die by charging. The sand soldiers and most of the werewolves collided. The spear condensed from yellow sand did not collapse upon contact. When the werewolves' weapons collided with the side of the spear, the sound of metal clashing rang out, and sparks flew in all directions. The sand soldiers were silent. Their movements were uniform, forward thrust. From throwing out the spear to retracting the spear, the speed was so fast that their eyes could not keep up. The werewolf did not have time to react. Blood spurted out from its chest and it fell straight to the ground. Some of the luckier werewolves relied on their nimble speed to open up more. Just as they were about to engage in battle excitedly, the spear in the hands of the sand soldier turned into a scimitar. The spear was not suitable for close combat, but the scimitar was. The werewolves were collectively dumbfounded. Chapter 125. Do I still have a choice in this hint? Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The werewolf's head and body were split into two. After a single exchange, the werewolf army was reduced to bloody corpses. If the sand soldier was killed, Klein could still obtain a soul. 3 of the werewolves bypassed the formation and were frozen into ice by Klein. The werewolves had also injured the sand soldiers. In other words, the sand soldiers didn't have any intention of dodging. It wasn't that they were lacking in intelligence, but it was just that the sand soldiers wouldn't be killed or no pain. The wounds on the sand soldiers' bodies would be constantly covered by the yellow sand and quickly healed. Even if their heads were chopped off or cut in half, the sand soldiers would still be able to recover. They would only disappear after 3 minutes. Not bad. Klein put away the horn and muttered, "If I keep blowing the horn, I can probably summon up to 100 sand soldiers. If so many sand soldiers swarm forward, unless I freeze them with frost rays, they can only fly into the air to dodge. I wonder if they can transform a long-range weapon like a bow?" With the thought, the sand soldier seemed to sense something as the machete in his hand turned into a large bow. That convenient? Can it conjure a hot weapon? He tried to conjure cannons, machine guns, and so on in his mind. This time, there were no more changes. All right, it can only be a cold weapon. Klein continued trying. Any cold weapon could basically be changed into. 3 minutes had passed. They didn't change back into the sand. I was so focused on experimenting with the sand soldiers that I forgot about the 7-colored fog in the sky. Klein collected the werewolf corpses on the ground and obtained a batch of flesh and blood, as well as some weapons and armor. The equipment wasn't very useful. It was all disintegrated into iron and copper. Klein flew into the air. His fingers touched the 7-colored fog. It was soft and could be grabbed. System notification. 7-colored fog +1. Check the details. 7-colored fog. A special weapon that can be absorbed. It can greatly increase soul power. Klein no longer hesitated and pounced forward. Slurp. Like noodles, the 7-colored fog was constantly sucked into Klein's mouth. Klein could clearly sense that his soul power was increasing. About half a minute later, a large mass of 7-colored fog was sucked clean. The total amount of soul power had doubled. Klein closed his eyes and used the full moon meditation method to sense his soul power pool and came to a conclusion. He rested on the spot for a quarter of an hour. He continued to head to the next catacomb. Klein looked at the prompts in 5 directions. Continue digging backward. It's empty. In the catacomb above, there's a fish pond. You can contract it. In the catacomb below, there's an iron treasure chest. There are also plants nearby that you can harvest. Dig to the left. Yo, an iron mine. It can extract large amounts of iron. Dig to the right. There's a silver treasure chest. You will enter the territory of the magma mermaids. Do not harbor any animosity towards them. You can use some food to trade with them. There will be some unexpected gains, and you can even do some wonderful things. Magma mermaids? Wonderful things? Klein decisively chose to dig to the right. It wasn't important whether or not something wonderful would happen. What mattered was that he had to dig for the silver treasure chest. He would also see if he could trade for any special items. Before he set off, he first checked the information about the magma mermaid. He opened the illustrated book. He searched. He didn't find any corresponding results. 3 minutes later, Klein dug a tunnel. He carried Little Fox and Little Wind into the black hole. The 64th catacomb. The entire catacomb was about 100 meters in length and width. The ground wasn't completely covered in lava. There was only a lava lake with a diameter of 50 meters in the middle. Klein first checked the shore. He quickly locked onto the silver treasure chest's location. Let's open the treasure chest first. Klein put the two little things down and flew to the treasure chest. There was no mistake in his inspection. Opening the treasure chest. System notification. Silver treasure chest +1. System notification. Fire rune +1. System reminder. Water runes +1. System reminder. Earth runes +1. System reminder. Map +1. System reminder. Ordinary blood pill +1. System reminder. Perfect runic map, small, +1. Klein heard some sounds coming from behind him and hurriedly put away his items. He turned his head and saw a figure quickly diving into the lava. A mermaid? Klein looked around for a moment and saw two small heads pop out from under the lava. It wasn't the human face he had imagined, but a fish head. The smile on his face froze. Could it be that the mermaids here had fish heads and human bodies? Klein couldn't help but think of a joke. If you were to be stranded on a desolate island, would you choose a woman with the upper body, a fish with the lower body, or a woman with the lower body of a fish with the upper body? If you chose the former, you would only have one mouth. If you chose the latter, you would have two. Hello. There's no need to be afraid. I'm just an adventurer passing by. You can call me Klein. Although it wasn't the mermaid he imagined, Klein still chose to take the initiative to express his goodwill. If he could exchange with them for special items, he would have profited greatly from this excavation. When he had opened the silver treasure chest, he had not obtained many good rewards. The blood pill was only at the ordinary level, and the map was only a small-scale one. At most, he would make a small profit. Therefore, Klein hoped to obtain a higher-level reward from this excavation. Chapter 126. Is it good? If it's good, you can trade with me. Hello, passer-by. I'm Rachel from the Magma Mermaids. It wasn't the two mermaids who had popped out. Instead, it came from the other side. Klein looked in the direction of the voice. The lava parted, revealing an exquisite face. A human body and a fishtail. His gaze focused. He couldn't help but look down. The lower half of his body did resemble human, but it was completely different from a human. Her skin was slightly red, and there were many translucent scales on her body. The lower half of her body was indeed a fishtail. There were some key parts. It seemed to be a thick turtle shell. It was unknown which type of fish was able to remain unmelted under the lava. Even so, Klein still had a taste of it. There was a great sense of exoticism in it. Klein seriously suspected that after staying in the catacombs world for too long, taste would unknowingly change. For a moment, he actually felt that it wasn't bad. I have no intention of entering. I hope I won't disturb you. Klein smiled. Are you a magma mermaid? I thought mermaids only looked like you. You're clansmen? Rachel chuckled. No, they're still young. They'll only look like me when they grow up. I see. Klein smiled inwardly. It turned out to be a misunderstanding. However, there was a big difference between whether the magma mermaids had grown up or not. Klein would rather have a mermaid with one mouth than a mermaid with two mouths. Of course, a human body and a fishtail might not only have one mouth. Rachel, are you the magma mermaid's matriarch? Klein saw more heads poking out. There were about 30 of them in total. Most of them had human bodies and fishtails, and they were all beautiful women with exquisite looks. They were all secretly observing Klein and discussing in low voices. When Klein made eye contact with them, they would hurriedly move away. Compared to the passion of the succubi, the magma mermaids were even more shy and timid. It was like a mature woman and the girl next door. No, we don't have a matriarch here. It's just that I'm the oldest, and they're all younger. Is that so? All of you look very young. Yes, I'm only 88 years old. Most of them are between 60 to 70 years old, and the younger ones are only 40 to 50 years old. Klein's smile froze once again. So Rachel was already so old. Of course, perhaps to the magma mermaids, 88 years was still young. Ahem, you already know my identity. I'm just a passerby. I walk around, make friends, and trade. Do you need anything? I have a lot of things here. Food and water. Seeing that the other party wasn't getting to the point, Klein decided to take the initiative. Water? We don't need water, Rachel said in all seriousness. Whether we're sick or hungry, we only drink lava. So there really are girls who like to drink lava. Klein sighed. Oh, nothing. Klein smiled. Then, do you need food? I have a lot of delicious food here. Do you want to try it? Can I try it? Yes, sure. If it's not bad, we're willing to trade with you. Rachel blinked her big bright eyes and said seriously, don't poison us. Poison is ineffective against us. Don't worry, Klein wouldn't bring trouble upon himself. Speaking of which, the magma mermaid wasn't scheming at all. She had actually made it clear. Klein took out a barbecue grill. He placed a piece of snowdrift ox beef on it, and then he added some bread and sweet fruits. The beef was cooked and seasoned, filling the air with a fragrance. Rachel sat on the shore, revealing the tail of the fish on her lower body. Klein took a few glances. She had a slender waist. I wonder if they'll eat grilled fish? Just as Klein had a bold idea, he immediately pressed it down. It was better not to court death. It smells so good. The magma mermaid asked for a pungent fragrance as they approached Klein's barbecue spot. Rachel also took in a deep breath, full of anticipation. It's done. Try the taste of the grilled meat first. Klein cut up the grilled meat and placed it on a plate before coming to Rachel's side. The bread and sweet fruits were also prepared and placed neatly. Come, have a taste. Klein sat to the side. Rachel looked at Klein and then looked down at the food. Without using a fork, she lowered her head and used her tongue to sweep away a piece of roast meat. It's a little hot. Klein had just reminded her, but he immediately remembered that they were drinking lava. It was impossible for such a little heat to burn their mouths. Delicious. Rachel said with a look of enjoyment. She continued lowering her head and he handed the plate to Rachel. All of you, come and try it, she said to the other mermaids. As Rachel nodded, the mermaids who couldn't wait any longer began eating. Some of them ate barbecued meat, some bread, and some sweet fruits. In the blink of an eye, everything was gone. After eating, everyone, including Rachel, stared at Klein. Klein smiled and said, the taste test is over. If you can come up with something good, not only will you be able to obtain some barbecued meat, I can also teach you how to make barbecued meat for free and give you condiments as a gift. Klein spoke with a smile. Chapter 127. Mr. Klein, do you want to have a child with me? The fish had already taken the bait. Rachel and her companion discussed for a moment before a mermaid dived into the lava. A minute later, the mermaid returned with a pearl in her hand. Furthermore, wherever she went, the lava would automatically separate as though it was wrapped in a transparent bubble. Klein's eyes lit up. Perhaps it was an item like a water-repellent bead. What do you think of it? Rachel asked carefully as she picked up the red bead. What do you think of it? It grows under the lava. It should be a good thing. Sure, Klein nodded expressionlessly. During the transaction, he couldn't let the other party see through his thoughts. Come, I'll teach you. Klein lit a bonfire on the shore, took out his tools, and began to teach him how to roast meat. The magma mermaid listened attentively to the lesson and quickly grasped the technique that wasn't complicated. Finally, Klein completed the transaction with more than 30 pieces of meat and some seasonings. System notification. Rare bubble bead +1. Klein took the bead. He checked the details. Rare bubble bead. In a liquid environment, it will form a transparent bubble and provide sufficient oxygen. It can control the bubble's rise and fall according to its will. How is it? Rachel asked nervously. Barely. Klein pretended to sigh. Since it's my first transaction with you, it's fine even if I suffer a small loss. Rachel sighed and said, Mr. Klein, you're such a good person. Thank you. They had been staying here and didn't know anything about the outside world. All they knew was that barbecued meat was rare to them, and bubble beads were of no use to them. Both sides took what they needed. Klein didn't leave immediately. Instead, he stayed behind to continue his conversation with the mermaids. During that time, he suggested that they could trade again. However, the mermaids didn't have anything good left. At the bottom of the magma lake, other than bubble beads, everything else had turned to ash. Although they couldn't trade, he could get some information from them. Unfortunately, they had been here for a long time and knew very little about the outside world. Klein also took the opportunity to test the effects of the bubble beads. At first, he was worried that the bubble beads would lose their effectiveness, so he only dared to test them bit by bit. After testing them many times, the bubble beads were indeed effective. He stayed in the transparent bubble beads and it didn't let any of the magma enter. Furthermore, he wouldn't feel the heat inside. There was a constant supply of oxygen from afar. Klein didn't dare to go too deep. He was still worried about the bubble beads. If they suddenly lost their effectiveness, he would be burned to death. Half an hour later, by the shore, Klein spread out a small map and planned the next route. He then said, "Continue digging to the right and then excavate the cave ahead. There's a water treasure chest here. It's marked as extremely dangerous. I'll go to the right to take a look first. If there's really danger, I'll change my route." Klein put away the map and took out the perfect washing machine blueprint that he had obtained previously. He studied it first. "Mr. Klein, do you want to have a child with me?" At that moment, a soft call came from within the lava. Klein looked in the direction of the voice. It wasn't Rachel, but another mermaid. "We should be in reproductive isolation." Klein wasn't too sure, looking at the innocent look of the little mermaid. "I'm afraid she's only curious about having a child." The mermaid tilted her head and asked curiously, "What's reproductive isolation?" "Nothing." Klein patted his head and said, "There don't seem to be any males in your group?" How do you reproduce?" "Drink magma," the mermaid said seriously. Klein sighed. "Magma is really omnipotent for you." Yes. The mermaid continued to ask in a daze, "You really don't want to?" "There's no need. I'm leaving this place." Klein shook his head repeatedly. "Oh, you're leaving?" The mermaid raised her voice. The mermaids who were studying how to grill meat came over. They tried to persuade Klein to stay. "Everyone, I'm sorry. My journey is still very long. Perhaps we can meet again in the future," Klein said casually. It wasn't like he could return the way he came. It would probably be extremely difficult for him to return to the catacomb. "I'm going now. The world is very big. We'll meet again if we're fated. Everyone, drink more lava in the future and live a good life." With his back facing the mermaids, Klein waved his hand elegantly. Little Fox and Little Wind followed behind him. They turned their heads every 3 steps, unwilling to part with the group of young ladies. Klein came to the right side of the mud wall. The map indicated that there was nothing in the catacomb on the right. According to tradition, he still had to check. Who knew if there were any crypt creatures passing by? Continue digging to the right. A vine monster just passed by. It enslaved 2 flower spirits. If you save them, you can get 2 more free laborers. There really are. Klein opened the illustrated book. He checked the information on the vine monster and the flower spirit. Vine monster walks in a desolate wetland in a cold swamp. Its entire body is covered in dried branches and rotten leaves. It exudes a nauseating smell of decay. Everywhere it goes, other than the flower spirit who can help it clean up the trash, other creatures will be rolled onto its body. It will use the vines to firmly wrap around it. The liquid it secretes will slowly dissolve the gift into meat paste and be sucked dry of nutrients by it. Ability: fire extinguishing odor. Weakness: slow movement. Danger factor: 58. Check ability: fire extinguishing odor. Releases odor, can extinguish most of the flames. Flower spirit: miniature elf, smaller than the size of a palm, possesses extraordinary strength. Is born kind, never does evil. Likes to be a hard-working little gardener, often bullied. Ability: growth halo. Weakness: weak resistance. Danger factor: 1. Check ability: growth halo. The plants around it are healthier and grow faster. After reading the flower spirit's information, Klein became even more determined to save them. How could such a kind little creature work for such an ugly monster? Chapter 128, The 65th Catacomb. Klein was very unhappy. Even if he had to work for himself. He had a lot of work to do here every day. He guaranteed that they wouldn't be idle. The thought of having 2 more coolies made Klein even more motivated to dig. Huff, huff, huff. Soon, he dug into the black hole. "Klein, see you later." Rachel's call came from behind. Klein didn't respond. He stepped into the black hole in silence. Little Fox and Little Wind turned around to take a look before leaving with their master. In the 65th catacomb, the gigantic vine monster was too eye-catching. This big fellow was at least 5 meters tall and was sitting on the ground resting. The 2 flower spirits were busy cleaning up the garbage on the vine monster's body. For example, armor that couldn't be digested, clothes, and so on. Did it just eat around? The werewolf's corpse hasn't been fully digested yet. Klein used Eagle Eye and was still able to see the details on the vine monster's body despite being dozens of meters away. It was a little disgusting. The werewolves that had just been captured were strewn all over the vine monster's huge body. The vine monster writhed to digest the werewolf carcass. Patter! One of the eyeballs fell out. The next second, a vine popped out, scooped up the eyeball, and stuck it back to his body. The two flower spirits were entangled by a slender, soft plant and could not fly far from the vine monster. Klein looked at Little Wind and Little Fox and said, "Save the flower spirit first, then we can deal with this big guy. I'll give you two a mission. In a while, Little Wind will walk underground to attract the attention of the big guy. Little Fox, approach from the right and cut off the plants that are entangling the flower spirits." Little Wind burrowed underground. Little Fox used the terrain to secretly make a detour. Klein flew into the air and waited for an opportunity. The vine monster had already discovered Klein's location. It crawled up from the ground and roared at him. Shoo! The vine monster extended its vine toward Klein. But it couldn't reach him. At this speed, it won't be able to hit the little fox. Klein was slightly relieved. Looking down, Little Fox had already quietly approached him. At this moment, the soil beneath the vine monster's right foot collapsed. Its massive body lost its balance. Little Wind revealed his head and made a face at the vine monster. The vine monster was enraged from embarrassment. It lowered its head and smashed its thick arm into the ground. Little Fox seized the opportunity and charged out from behind the rock on its right. She moved at high speed. She suddenly increased its speed. With a leap, she sliced through a plant with her sharp claws. Her body landed on the vine monster's thigh. She leapt again and cut off another plant in midair. The two flower spirits lost their restraints. They happily let out a loud cry and quickly ran away with Little Fox. The vine monster was furious. It took heavy steps and gave chase at full speed. The ground trembled. The vines behind Little Fox attacked. The vine monster's vines could not touch the little fox. However, the two flower spirits were not fast. They were about to be caught. A round thing fell from the sky. Bang! It landed in front of the vine monster. A burst of strong light exploded. The vine monster was momentarily careless and temporarily lost its sight. The vine that was about to grab the flower spirit lost its direction and missed. Hit! Klein, who was floating in the air, slid his palm and threw out another string of fire elemental missiles. Although the vine monster could extinguish the flames, at this point in time, the vine monster was blinded by the flashbangs. The fire elemental missiles could land on its body. Puff, puff, puff. The vine monster was ignited. Just as Klein was about to fire a few more shots, the big guy regained its vision and looked up angrily. Its pair of large dark green eyes were filled with killing intent. So fast? Klein didn't know if it was because the effects of the flashbangs weren't good, or if the vine monster's eyes were more adapted to strong light. Boom! A black stench spewed out from the vine monster's buttocks. When the flames on its body met the stench, they were instantly extinguished. Generally speaking, the substance contained in its butt was also combustible. It was strange that the vine monsters could be used to extinguish fire. Upon seeing this, Klein originally wanted to use elemental missiles, but he changed his tactics. Shoo! A frost ray landed. The vine monster was slow, so there was no way to kill it. One of its legs was frozen into ice. It flew into a rage and stretched out its thick arm, wanting to shatter the ice. Another ray of light descended. It froze its upper body. A few consecutive frost rays froze the vine monster's upper body and thighs. This fellow's vitality was extremely tenacious. Under such circumstances, the vines on its body were still flailing about. Let's see how you fart after I freeze your breath. Klein didn't want to continue playing with the vine monster. He flew to the back and shot out a beam of light. After confirming that there were no mistakes, he used a fire elemental missile. The target was its big head. Boom, boom, boom. Under the constant bombardment, its head was almost rotten. The flames burned, but there was no way to fart it out. The vine monster struggled on the spot until it was beyond recognition before it collapsed. System notification. Soul +5. Klein landed on the ground and retrieved the vine monster. He obtained a large amount of garbage from the decomposition. There weren't many pieces of meat, and the blood had 2L. Furthermore, it had a special effect. Vine monster blood. Natural fertilizer. Suitable for watering plants. It can accelerate their growth and is comparable to perfect fertilizer. Klein only had the method to produce excellent fertilizer. Excellent fertilizer could increase the growth rate by 2 times. The blood of the vine monster was 1 level higher, so how could it increase by 4 to 5 times? Klein didn't let go of the werewolves that hadn't been digested. He broke them all down and used them to make fertilizer. Everything was settled. Klein suddenly heard chattering coming from behind. Chapter 129. Agreement reached. When he turned around, he saw Little Fox leading 2 flower spirits close in. Flower spirit, female. It was the size of a palm. There were translucent wings on their backs, shaped like leaves. They looked exquisite, like porcelain dolls. They were dressed in flowers and green leaves. The 2 little things timidly hid behind Little Fox's head as they carefully observed Klein and whispered to each other. "Hello, hello." One of the flower spirits flew in front of Klein and used its loudest voice to speak. It was the underground common language. Klein smiled and tried his best to look gentle as he said softly, "Hello, I'm Klein." How do I address the 2 beautiful flower spirits? In order to trick the little coolies, he had to be a little sweet-tongued. He would first trick them, then let them taste the exploitation from the capitalist class. "Ah, you call us flower spirits?" The other elf also flew in front of them and exclaimed, "Are you surprised?" Klein pretended to be surprised. Yes, that's the best address we've ever heard." The 2 elves were bedazzled. From their bodies to their souls, they floated. "Both of you are very cute. You deserve to be called that." Klein praised them again. "Thank you. I'm Alu, and she's Lulu." The 2 flower spirits flew to Klein's shoulders and sat down. They swayed their calves and chatted happily with Klein. "Thank you for saving us this time." That's right. Alu and I were taken away from our home by the disgusting vine monster. It's been more than 10 days. HMPH, I've been helping it dispose of its garbage and clean up its festering pus every day. Lulu, stop talking. I feel like vomiting right now. Fortunately, Sir helped us take revenge. HMPH. Sir is so powerful, the vine monster is so big. Of course, otherwise, would he be able to save us? Aiya, Lulu, do you still remember the way back? Oh, I forgot. Oh, my poor garden. Without my meticulous care, it will definitely be very ugly now. Fool, when we were captured, the garden had already been flattened by the vine monster. Now that you mention it, I'm not sad anymore. Fool, they were chattering and talking to themselves, completely forgetting their conversation with Klein. 2 little chatterboxes. Klein found it funny and couldn't help but retort. The topic was immediately diverted by them. When the flower spirits were almost done talking, Klein interjected. "Since the 2 of you can't find your way home, why don't you stay for the time being and stay with us? I've heard that the flower spirits can take good care of any plant. In fact, I've never really believed it." "Oh, you actually don't believe it?" HMPH, this is the talent of his flower spirits. There aren't any plants that we can't take good care of. Alu and Lulu felt their hair stand on end as they expressed their displeasure. "Is that so?" Klein's voice changed. Klein looked at them and said, "I happen to have some plants that need to be looked after. If the 2 of you are willing to stay, it'll be a good opportunity for me to witness the abilities of the flower spirits." "Where is it?" "It's no big deal." Alu and Lulu looked around. Klein smiled and opened the runic base. "Wow, your place is so big." "Runic base? It's so powerful." They looked around. Klein came to the greenhouse and smiled. "There are all kinds of plants here. If there were 2 of you to take care of them." Without waiting for him to finish, Alu and Lulu had already entered to the greenhouse. Klein had built a total of 3 greenhouses. Now, they were all one. They were 20 meters long, 15 meters wide, and 2 meters tall. There were a variety of plants inside. Some had grown into saplings, some had bloomed and bore fruit, and some were even seeds. "Wow, a breadfruit tree? This is Coldplay grass? So many. Oh, it's a pity that there aren't any flowers that we like." The 2 flower spirits flew around the greenhouse, looking around. "How is it? Are you considering staying?" Klein said meaningfully. "I can take care of all your food and drinks in the future. I'll also take care of this greenhouse for you. In the future, the greenhouse will be expanded. Are you interested?" "Yes, I'm interested." Alu and Lulu flew in front of them. nodding their heads repeatedly, afraid that Klein would disagree. It was great to be able to take care of such a large greenhouse. They even provided food, drinks, shelter, and protection. And he was their savior. It was awesome. Klein reached a simple agreement with the two flower spirits. Although from Klein's point of view, providing food and shelter for the coolies was the most basic condition, Alu and Lulu were still very grateful. They patted their chests and promised that they would take good care of the plants in the future. This trip had yielded 2 coolies. Klein continued digging. According to the original principle, he would continue digging forward. There was a crystal treasure chest over there. The map indicated that it was extremely dangerous. In the catacomb ahead, there's a crystal treasure chest. There's a stitching monster, waiting for a new prey to take the bait. Stitching monster. It's another brand new crypt creature. Klein couldn't help but imagine a monster whose entire body was stitched up with a needle and thread based on its name. He checked the illustration. The result appeared. Chapter 130. For the sake of the crystal treasure chest, he had to bear with it. Stitching monster. A distant relative of the bonding monster. It likes to forcefully sew any weak creature it sees into its body and gradually assimilate the stitched creature's body until they become one. They depend on each other and usually have a variety of abilities. Ability. Stitched creature. Weakness. The thoughts of the stitched creatures are different. It often causes them to act differently. Danger factor. 70. Check the ability. Stitched creature. Quickly sew the main body and the weak creature together, assimilating them into one body in a short period of time. There was more than one image in the illustrated handbook. It was more diverse. The structure was similar. Most of them were fat people. Their bodies were filled with all sorts of creatures. The vine monster would digest its prey, but the stitched monster wouldn't. At the very least, it would retain the head of the stitched creature or a portion of its limbs. The overall appearance was nauseating. The shape was distorted, and Klein could almost imagine how uncomfortable he would feel when he saw it with his own eyes. Even if he looked at a few 3D images, it was already enough to make him want to vomit. The vine monster has already made me nauseous. Now there's another stitching monster. Klein was speechless as he turned off the illustrated handbook. For the crystal treasure chest, he had to endure it. This thing had a danger factor of 70, which was even worse than the vine monster. He asked, "Do you want to stay in the runic base or outside?" Before setting off, Klein sought the opinions of the two flower spirits. Unlike Little Fox and Little Wind, their combat strength was about 0. If they followed them around, they wouldn't seem to be of any help and would even become a burden. While the runic base was in a state of receiving, it could also accommodate living creatures. However, there was a limit to the amount. Klein's base had already raised some sandfish, so it wouldn't be a problem to put Alu and Lulu inside. Especially after the base was upgraded, the amount of oxygen it could accommodate had increased. There was also no need to worry about the oxygen inside. After receiving it, it would automatically extract air to store it. In a situation where there weren't many living creatures, it could last for an entire day. We have to stay in the greenhouse. The outside world is too dangerous. The two flower spirits expressed their stance. As such, Klein kept them into the base, but he had some instructions. For example, some things were not allowed to be touched. How the plants were managed was up to them. As long as it wasn't destroyed, everything was negotiable. A few minutes later, Klein had arrived at the 66th catacomb. It was the 5th excavation of the day. There was no flat ground here. More than half of it was covered by the swamp. The dark swamp gave off an unpleasant rotten smell. Klein didn't find the crystal treasure chest immediately. Instead, he first found the location of the stitching monster. It was no smaller than the vine monster. Its body was bloated. There was only one front, but he could already see the heads of more than a dozen creatures. There were gnomes, werewolves, and sand trolls. Some of their heads were embedded in their bloated bodies, some of their faces were exposed, and some of them only had mouths and noses. They were all talking to each other, as if they were having a mental breakdown. "A friend is here. Haha. Are we going to add another friend? There's more than one. Quick, quick, catch them. I can't wait to share their memories. Shish, everyone be quiet. Don't scare our guests away. Put them in my position. All of you squeeze together. I'm alone here. It's so lonely. Turn around and let me see them. The stitching monster had eyes in all directions. The first thing it noticed was Klein, Little Fox, and Little Wind. Everyone moved towards Klein. The main body's head was like a lump. It only had a pair of eyes and ears. It didn't have a nose or a mouth. The stitching monster's speed became faster and faster, and it didn't match its body size at all. It's most likely an ability from stitching a certain creature. Klein didn't dare to be careless. He raised his hand and shot out frost rays. With a distance of 20 meters between them, the stitching monster's poison suddenly weakened, and a large portion of its body was frozen into ice. The stitching body that was still talking nonsense was reduced by more than half. Run, we're no match for it. A spellcaster, it's actually a spellcaster. Run, why run? We can absorb it. How wonderful would it be if a spellcaster absorbed it? Haha, go to hell, all of you go to hell. Disgusting existences like us should have died a long time ago. Some wanted to run, but there were also some who wanted to fight. Some even harbored resentment, hoping that everyone would die and be freed as soon as possible. The main body of the stitching monster had the decision-making power. It continued to charge forward. Suddenly, it raised its palm, and there was a face on its palm, just like a lizard. Whoosh! Flames spewed out of the lizard's mouth. Klein raised his hand and shot out another frost ray. The flames were frozen into ice in the air. The stitching monster raised its other arm. It was another biological face. Eye devil! Klein's heart skipped a beat as he hurriedly averted his gaze. At the same time, he raised his left arm. The wind shield was formed. In an instant, flames charged over. At the same time, at the stitching monster's chest, two tongues shot out from an opening. They were like tentacles. They were more than 10 meters long. Klein grunted as a strong light burst out from his crotch. Ding! The flash spell took effect. Klein rolled and raised his hand to fire another 3 frost rays. Caught off guard, the stitching monster lost its vision and was hit by the 3 rays one after another. Its entire body was frozen into ice. Dead. Chapter 131. Little Fox is showing off in front of Little Wind. System notification. Soul +6. Klein recycled the massive physical body. He dissected a large amount of flesh and blood. Then, he turned them all into fertilizer. Time to find the treasure chest. Klein flew into the air. After searching around, he didn't find any traces of the treasure chest. Is it below or in the swamp? Klein's target circled around. After 15 minutes of searching, he stopped at a swamp. Dig down 1 meter. There's a crystal treasure chest. Klein took out the bubble pearl and descended. The bubble bead could repel liquid substances. The swamp was filled with mud, water, and dirt. The bubble bead formed a bubble in a liquid environment. It couldn't only repel liquids. It would repel any substances other than the user in a liquid environment. Even Little Fox and Little Wind were unable to enter. If he didn't have the bubble bead, Klein could also dig out the treasure chest, but he didn't want to dirty himself. Klein dived down 1 meter. A crystal treasure chest appeared in front of him. System notification. Crystal treasure chest +1. System notification. Water rune +3. System notification. Fire rune +3. System notification. Wind rune +3. System notification. Earth rune +3. System notification. Excellent blood pill +1. System notification. Rare thundercaller creation blueprint +1. System notification. Sand soldier horn restoration blueprint +1. System notification. Perfect runic elevator blueprint +1. Klein opened the crystal treasure chest and a series of feedback popped out. The crystal treasure chest would provide items according to the needs of the person who opened it. Klein happened to lack the method to repair the sand soldier horn, which fulfilled the requirements. Rare thundercaller blueprint. A combat rune device that can only be worn on the neck. It is suitable for women and can increase the wearer's speed. When actively used, the user can issue a thunder declaration, which can deter crypt creatures and cause them to fall into a momentary daze. Cooldown time. 5 minutes. Perfect runic elevator blueprint. A daily runic device that can be installed in the runic base. Only suitable for bases with stairs. 1 click can solve the problem of lazy people going up and down the stairs. Sand soldier horn restoration blueprint. After learning, master the restoration method for the sand soldier horn. It's a little difficult to gather the materials. Klein naturally learned everything. The collar said that it was suitable for women, but it didn't say that men couldn't wear it. However, for a man to wear a collar, it was more or less a little awkward. Unless he played the role of the female owner's male pet. The collar looks more exquisite from the image. I wonder if I can give it to Little Fox or Little Wind. Klein had thought of equipping his pets. However, runic equipment was usually larger, so it would be inconvenient to wear it. A collar was more suitable. Cats and dogs could wear a collar. Foxes and pangolins should be fine as well. Klein opened the crafting list. He looked at the synthesis formula. Rare thunder collar. Wind rune, earth rune, fire rune, silver, animal skin. Perfect runic elevator. Wind rune, fire rune, water rune, iron, soul transference. Sand soldier horn restoration. Wind rune, earth rune, water rune, fire rune, earth marrow. Not only did the conditions of the thunder collar and the elevator meet, they were also greatly exceeded. There was no hope of repairing the sand soldier horn for the time being. He had never seen earth marrow or soul transference before. Klein didn't think that the earth yellow in the marrow medicine here was most likely the same as jade marrow. It was also a mineral material. As for the soul transference tool, it might need to be forged. Klein searched the exchange market, but he didn't find it. Let's talk about it in the future. Let's make a collar first. He chose the thunder collar. He would make one first. System notification. Wind rune 15, earth rune 5, fire rune 15, silver 5, beast skin 2. System notification. Rare thunder collar successfully forged. There was a small and exquisite collar in Klein's hand. It was brown and had thin. Its style was more feminine. Little Fox, come. Try the collar. Klein squatted down and called Little Fox forward. Little Fox sat at his feet, raised her head, and stared curiously at the collar. I'll let you wear this and see if it works. Klein untied the collar and put it on for Little Fox. The collar was a little too big in general. But after it was put on, the collar automatically shrank. It fitted Little Fox's fur perfectly. Is it too tight? Klein asked. Little Fox shook her head. Look, the speed has increased. Also, you should be able to understand the special ability of the collar. Give it a try as well. Klein looked left and right, smiled, and stared at Little Wind. Later, use the collar's ability on Little Wind. Woo, woo, woo. Little Fox nodded repeatedly, revealing a sly fox smile. Little Wind. Little Fox first tested her speed. The thunder collar was indeed effective on Little Fox. Her speed increased by more than 30%. Not bad. Klein nodded to himself. This could be considered as strengthening Little Fox's advantage once again. Suddenly, Little Fox stopped. She faced Little Wind. "Oh woo!" Little Fox roared. When its voice reached Little Wind's ears, it sounded like thunder. Boom! Little Wind was stunned. For a moment, Little Fox's figure was magnified dozens of times in front of his eyes, causing him to be unable to breathe. The entire deterrence process lasted less than a second. Little Wind shook his head and gradually came to his senses. It's a bit like the ability of a rotting corpse or a jackal. The mental roar. Klein saw it and said in satisfaction. Klein smiled and said, although it doesn't last long, it has a short cooldown. Even a momentary lapse in concentration can determine the direction of the battle and give Little Fox a chance to escape. Little Fox was very satisfied with her new equipment as she ran back and forth in the vicinity. Chapter 132. A crypt creature with a gentle nature. Klein looked at Little Wind and said, Little Wind, come here. I'll get you a collar as well. Little Wind looked at the Little Fox's collar and shook his head repeatedly. You don't like it? Klein pondered for a moment and gave up on the idea of putting a collar on Little Wind. If Little Wind were to transform during battle, the collar might be torn apart, or even become a burden. Split the 2 blood pills. Klein took out 2 more blood pills. One from the crystal treasure chest and 1 ordinary blood pill from the magma mermaid's catacomb appeared. Choose for yourself. There were 2 red pills in Klein's palm. Their appearances were about the same. Due to the difference in level, Klein gave the choice to the 2 little things, allowing them to choose at random. Little Wind took one of them first. The remaining one is the superior one, Klein thought to himself. Little Fox swallowed the other one. The warm current reverberated in the bodies of the 2 little things. They froze on the spot. While they digested the blood pills, Klein looked at the catacombs in 5 directions. Continue digging forward. A group of werewolves are preparing lunch. In the catacomb on the left, there's only lava and crocodiles. In the right cavern, a section of tree shepherds happened to pass by. They're driving a batch of fruit trees. Not long ago, they sat down to rest. Perhaps you can trade with them and get a batch of fruit tree seeds. Dig up. There is plenty of oxygen here. It will help you get your spirits up. Dig down. There are 2 bronze treasure chests waiting for you to open them. None of the 5 catacomb caverns had particularly good resources. They were either bronze treasure chests or looking for the tree shepherd. Can fruit trees be driven away? Klein leaned more towards the catacomb on the right. The bronze treasure chests were no longer enough to satisfy Klein's appetite. Perhaps the fruit tree seeds would be a surprise. Check the information on the tree shepherd, Klein recited silently. The illustration unfolded. Tree shepherd. A green, upright walking species. It loves nature and has a kind nature. It interacts with trees all year round and has the ability to control them. It even has the ability to move them. In order for the trees to absorb sufficient nutrients and water, it will often graze the land and search for water in different catacombs. Ability. Control trees. Weakness. Combat strength depends on the quality of the trees. Danger factor. 8. Regarding the tree shepherd, it meant it was a herder. However, the tree shepherd wasn't herding cattle or sheep, but trees. Klein wasn't surprised by this. In the catacombs world, anything could happen. The danger factor of the tree shepherd wasn't high, but Klein didn't think that he could control it at will. The danger factor was low. Klein guessed that it wasn't because he lacked ability, but because he was naturally kind. To be able to shuttle through the catacombs caverns without any ability, those crypt creatures were enough to kill a tree shepherd. If I can trade fruit tree seeds, it would be best if it's a dwarf tree species. The greenhouse is 2 meters tall. I can choose to expand it up to a height of 4 meters. A floor was less than 6 meters tall, so it could only be expanded once. Fruit trees within 4 meters were acceptable. Yes, that's not necessarily the case. I can save the seeds first and wait for the base to be upgraded in the future. By then, the greenhouse might be able to expand upwards. As Klein pondered, Little Wind and Little Fox had already digested the blood pill. This time, their strength had increased, but they didn't have any new abilities. During the last transformation, Little Fox's 4th tail had only grown to 2/3 of its original size. After consuming the exquisite blood pill, it was finally the same length as the other 3 tails. It was just as furry. Woo, woo, woo. Little Fox waved her 4 tails in front of Klein as though she was showing off. All right, I see it. Klein stroked her soft fur and smiled. 4 tails are the same length. You won't be OCD. Woo, woo, woo. Little Fox narrowed her eyes. She liked her master's methods too much. After resting for a moment, they headed to the next catacombs. The 67th catacombs. When Klein arrived, the tree shepherds seemed to be about to set off. There was more than 1 tree shepherd at the scene. There were 3 of them in total. Both parties were 50 to 60 meters away. Klein heard the tree shepherds shouting one after another. It wasn't the common language of the catacombs. The voice sounded a little ancient. The fruit trees that had originally rooted here suddenly moved when they heard the shouts. Large numbers of fruit trees were uprooted from the soil. The roots condensed into 2 or 3 or 4 legs, and they took steps along with the shouts. They were orderly and rhythmic. In other words, they only moved along with the tree shepherd's voice. They didn't truly have a soul or consciousness. There were hundreds of fruit trees, densely packed and neatly arranged. Some were tall and some were short. Some had grown many fruits, while some had yet to bloom. Every time he took a step, there would always be the sound of identical footsteps. It was very loud. The voice of the tree shepherds are so infectious. Klein could sense his blood jumping up and down as the tree shepherd shouted. It almost jumped out of his throat. Chapter 133. You can give less, but you can't not give. The 3 tree shepherds had already noticed Klein. They only glanced at him and didn't stop shouting. They looked like humans, but they weren't tall. They held withered tree canes in their hands. Their skin was dark green, a light green color. The area around their eyes was black, like a giant panda. Their hair was also dark green, and they were tied into pigtails. They had a beard. Their faces were like old tree bark. Due to this, Klein quickly approached and blocked in front of the tree shepherds. His voice instantly disappeared. "Friend, is there anything you need our help with?" The tallest tree shepherds came forward to ask. "What a good temper." Klein revealed a warm smile. "I've only heard of the legend of the tree shepherd in the past. Today is the first time I've seen it. Don't blame me for being excited." "Really?" The tree shepherds smiled in return. "I see you have a lot of fruit trees with you. Are you going to the catacomb ahead?" Klein looked at the other two tree shepherds, who were also polite, and continued. "I am interested in the fruit trees behind you, and I personally like fruit. I have planted breadfruit trees, sweet fruit trees and fragrant rice trees, but I wonder what kind of fruit trees you are leading. There are a lot of species." When the tree shepherd heard Klein talk about the fruit trees, all of his faces were filled with smiles. His face, which was originally like the bark of a tree, was even more wrinkled. It was also in a black circle. Pandas were considered cute, but the tree shepherd looked like he had been beaten up. "Is that so? Can you introduce them to me?" Klein didn't need them to introduce him. The system would still give a description. However, in order to allow the transaction to proceed normally, it was necessary to talk nonsense with the tree shepherd. "All right," the leading tree shepherd nodded. "Follow me." Klein followed the tree herder into the neat fruit forest. The two other tree shepherds accompanied him. He didn't know if it was because he didn't have any ulterior motives or if they weren't worried that Klein would have any ill intentions. In short, they allowed Klein to approach and enter the fruit forest. The tree shepherd smiled and said, "This is a yellow sausage fruit. Come, try the taste of a large sausage." It was actually a fruit that was similar to a banana. Its skin was thinner and had a little juice. "This is a white juice fruit tree. There's no flesh inside, only fruit juice. Have a taste." The tree shepherd said, "I heard that the first white juice fruit was mutated from a black juice fruit." The tree shepherd picked a fruit that was similar to a coconut. After Klein tasted it, he realized that it had a Sprite flavor. "This one is shorter and is called a red heart fruit. It has a sweet taste with a hint of blood. Isn't it very special?" He stopped along the way. The tree shepherd was extremely hospitable. After introducing a fruit, he would pick one or two fruits. If there were no fruits, he would simply describe the taste. From the beginning to the end, he admired all of them. Klein smiled and said, "Thank you for your explanation. It looks like we won't be having lunch at noon. Every piece of fruit is delicious." Klein smiled and pointed at the two little fellows at his feet. Their bellies were round, and they were all stuffed. The tree shepherd smiled and said, "It's a pleasure to be able to share our fruits with you." The smile on the tree shepherd's face became even more radiant. He was happier to hear that Klein approved of their fruits than to praise them. The three of them smiled. Klein said, "Friends, before we part ways, can I make a request that is a little too much?" Klein licked his lips, showing that he was still unsatisfied. His eyes were still looking at the fruit forest. "Please speak." The three tree shepherds became even more smug. Look, this was the charm of fruits. Klein looked at the three of them who were smiling and said, "I want to buy a batch of seeds from the three of you. It would be best if you have all of them. Is that okay?" Klein sighed. "I hope to be able to eat these fruits every day in the future. If it's possible, I'm willing to exchange some water with you. These fruit trees seem to be lacking in water." "Seeds? We can give them to you." The leading tree shepherd said sincerely, "We can give them to you for free. There's no need for water. Every drop of water is extremely important when walking in the catacombs. Thank you for your generosity." Klein was delighted when he saw that his bluff had succeeded. He really liked simple and kind crypt creatures. "Wait a moment, we'll go get the seeds." The tree shepherd returned to the flat fruit forest. A few minutes later, they came out again with a batch of various seeds in their hands, wrapped in layers of leaves. Klein also provided them with 5 liters of water. Although the tree shepherd wanted to give it away free of charge, Klein insisted on using water to trade. As a conscientious businessman, he could offer less, but he couldn't not give anything. He still had to have this principle. Klein watched as the tree shepherds left the catacomb. There were more than 50 seeds in the heavy leaves in his hands. He had identified more than 20 species just now. They were all fruit tree seeds. Other than the few species that Klein already had, Most of them were new to him. With so many seeds, I can taste all kinds of fruits in at least a day or two or a few days at most. Klein was also able to expand the runic base. He arrived at the greenhouse on the first floor. Alu and Lulu were dancing in the greenhouse, humming unique songs. From time to time, they would come to the water tank in the greenhouse to scoop water and sprinkle it on the surface of the plants. They used coconuts to weave a small basket. Each time, they would scoop a little water, which was extremely inefficient. Watering a plant required them to fly back and forth more than a dozen times, but they still enjoyed it, brimming with smiles. Tisk, how diligent, Klein praised. Chapter 134. The ice cream fruit has officially ripened. Mr. Klein, you're here. Mr. Klein, look at how well we've taken care of them, right? When they saw Klein appear, they carried the leaf basket and flew up to Klein to ask for credit. Yes, it's all right, but we have to keep up the good work. Klein smiled and spread the seeds in his hand. Let's go, Klein said. Look, I got another batch of seeds. I'll plant them later. The flower spirit nodded and said, let me take a look. Oh, this is a yellow sausage fruit seed, a red heart fruit, a white juice fruit, and a milk fruit. There were some species that Klein couldn't tell the difference between, unless he relied on the system to check the details. The two flower spirits were very familiar with them. They looked at the shape and asked about the seed's taste, immediately identifying the species. Klein thought for a moment before saying, with so many seeds, it's unlikely that I can plant them. That's right. Furthermore, some fruit trees can grow very high. The greenhouse isn't big enough. They turned to look at the greenhouse before looking up at Klein. It can be expanded. You two, step back. Klein patted the flower spirit's small milk bag. Lulu and Alu flew back. He opened the manufacturing list. He chose the greenhouse. It showed that it was expanded to the left and right. Then, it was expanded upwards with the 5 greenhouses on the ground. There were 3 greenhouses, which meant that there were 7 of them. Total consumption: earth runes, fire runes, water runes, wood, and iron. There were more than 150 of them. The planting area was 5 greenhouses, but the height had doubled. The total planting area was 300 square meters, and the height was 4 meters. It occupied most of the first floor. Klein moved all the miscellaneous items away. Only the greenhouse, the meat field, the warehouse, and Klein were left on the first floor. All kinds of supplies and equipment were placed on the second floor. Wow, it's even bigger now. That's awesome. Alu and Lulu flew up and down in the planting shed. Klein dug nearly 30 pits, and the flower spirits helped by placing the seeds. Every pit was designated by them. If the planting was too tight, it would snatch the nutrients. If the planting was too far away, it would waste space. The flower spirits understood the habits of plants, so they could give good guidance. More than 30 seeds were planted. Klein clapped his hands and fertilized them again. The job was supposed to be done by the flower spirits, but they were too small and too slow to fertilize. The fertilizer is already done. You can do whatever you want. I still have things to do. Klein instructed and left the greenhouse. Alu and Lulu began to get busy again. Little Wind, bury the fish catcher first. You should know how to operate it. Just bury it underground. Klein summoned Little Wind and handed the fish catcher to him. There was already bait in it, and it had already been activated. The fish catcher was even bigger than Little Wind. He didn't use his immense powers. He carried the fish catcher on his back and staggered out of the base. Little Fox, go and cut up 2 pieces of snowdrift ox beef. Klein patted the little fox and sent it away. He opened the manufacturing list again. He chose the elevator. He chose the installation location. Klein installed it against the wall. He would only pass through the hall on the 5th floor. A cylindrical pipe leading to the 2nd floor appeared in front of Klein. The elevator was bound to the runic base, so there was no need to add a soul. It was the same as the elevator. There was a button at the door. Klein pressed the button to go up. The elevator door opened. Klein entered, and there was a digital button to go to each floor. He pressed the 3rd floor. The door closed. The elevator, which was like a capsule, quickly climbed up. In the blink of an eye, he was on the 3rd floor. Klein tried it a few times. The experience wasn't bad. It was just that there wasn't much space in the elevator. It could hold at most 3 to 5 people at a time. He and his two pets were the only ones who went up and down the building. This little space was enough. Klein went to the kitchen on the 4th floor and found a spot to create a perfect runic juicer. The juicer required consumption: wind rune 4, water rune 2, iron 5, and crystal 2. The exterior was cylindrical. The middle part was transparent crystal. The internal structure was quite different from an ordinary juicer. There wasn't even a filter. Klein tried to put in a fruit. He closed it and clicked start. About 3 seconds later, the juicer was finished. Then, he pressed the button at the back. At the bottom of the juicer, sweet fruit juice slowly leaked out and fell into the bowl in front of him. As expected, I can't see any juicing at all. Klein's eyes lit up when he took a normal sip. Compared to eating fruit, the juice that was stored in the juicer had a stronger fragrance and was even sweeter. If this were to be chilled, the taste would be even better. Klein raised his head and drank all of it. Then, Klein created the runic washing machine. The shape of the washing machine was square, like a large iron box. Not only could it wash clothes, it could also be dried. Furthermore, it was similar to a washing machine or a dishwasher. It could use water in an economic way and save water resources. It needed to add a soul to run. A soul could run for 60 hours. Little Fox and Little Wind had also tried the elevator, and they were very satisfied with the equipment. As they had eaten too many fruits, they only had a simple roast meat for lunch. It was the first time that Alu and Lulu had barbecued meat, and they were enjoying it so much that their bellies were almost full. They were rolling around on the table with their bellies in their arms. Klein couldn't help but laugh when he saw them. After dinner, the ice cream fruit had officially ripened. Chapter 135. Old Friend in Trouble. Klein picked all the fruits. There were 16 in total. All of them were frozen in the refrigerator. He didn't know how the ice cream was or how it tasted. It was a leisurely afternoon. Klein lay on the chair mountain on the balcony, enjoying the calm breeze. The ice cream ruets were frozen in the refrigerator. It would take about half an hour to an hour to complete. Klein was prepared to finish eating the ice cream before continuing with the excavation. There were still 4 excavations left for the day, and there was still a lot of time. Just now, Klein had placed another batch of goods on the shelves. The prices had been adjusted. They weren't as profitable as they were at the beginning, but they could still earn money. Alice sent him a private message. "Brother Klein, are you free? I have to submit today's interest." It was a private message from Alice. Interest naturally referred to the contract for the water condenser. "I'm free." After Klein replied, the other party quickly returned the interest. Most people voluntarily submitted it. If they didn't voluntarily submit it, the system would automatically deduct it at the same time of the day. "Did Brother Klein take a shower last night?" Alice sent a message. "Yes." "Ah, then why didn't you ask me to trade second-hand bath water? I thought you were taking a shower. Did you sell it to someone else?" Alice was a little disappointed. After all, she had already discussed it with Klein. If someone interfered and offered a higher price to contract second-hand bath water, it would be such a pity. Although she already had 2 excellent water condensers, it wouldn't be enough for her to take a bath without several days of accumulation. At most, she could get some water to wipe her sweat. Klein thought for a moment before saying, "I have a shower device. Every time I take a bath, the water will be taken away. Furthermore, the water used by the shower device isn't much, only about 1 liter." Klein didn't want to be seen as discrediting, which was why it was too white. "Runic device? Yes. Then can I buy one?" "Yes, but you can't resell it. Furthermore, the price won't be cheap." Alice smiled and said, "Brother Klein, name your price." "Any price is fine. 20 runes and 8 units of rubber." To synthesize a new early stage, the core materials were 5 runes and 4 rubber. Other materials weren't worth mentioning. Klein didn't think Alice could afford it. Not to mention 20 runes, 8 rubber was not easy to collect. There are very few people on the market who were selling rubber. "Well, you're a little expensive, but I can live with that." Alice thought about it for half a minute and gave an unexpected answer. "Are you sure?" Klein clearly underestimated the worth of the little rich woman. Yes, I need 2 units of rubber now. I will buy them later. If I do, I'll order one from Big Brother Klein today." "All right." Klein thought for a moment and sent another message. "After the content of today's order is completed, I can also gift you an ice cream. Oh, there's an ice cream? Then I'll have to work harder. I'll find some friends to help. Wait for my good news. After replying, Alice stopped replying. Klein turned off the private message. He switched to the World Channel. Trade a guide. A perfect guide for dealing with carrion jackals and wolves. It can clear the level without any injuries. Other than me, no one else knows about it. I have a guide for the night whistle. If you want it, give me a picture of the night whistle. I will return it to you as a beast and guarantee that it will be restored. Get lost, Lu Chong. Yesterday, you also said that you would return it 100%. In the end, I didn't recognize it when I encountered the single-horned sandhound today. I only knew that it was a single-horned sandhound after I nearly died. Tonight's regional ranking is going to be updated, right? I wonder what kind of benefits will there be if the ranking is high. Could it be a blessing buff again? Last time, there was a European emperor in our group with a blessing buff. The gap of the box was not even wider than the crack of the box. It was awesome. Edward and Cynthia dug up something good this morning. The advertising space is for rent. It can cover more than 30 regional channels. If you want to keep it private, don't come. The channel was filled with all kinds of news. Some of them had already begun selling information, such as strategies to deal with crypt creatures. It was unknown if the strategies were accurate. However, there were people who exposed some people who sold fake information, nearly causing death. After diving for more than 10 minutes, Klein switched to the regional channel. Brother Meng, I lasted 5 minutes with the juicer today. It should be a record, right? What, 5 minutes? That can't be true. Is it my turn today? I can finally have another 15 minutes with the juicer. This group of people were talking about Charm Stone Woman. I heard that Edward's area is equipped with ordinary water condensers. Today, they even showed off to me. I almost couldn't help but tell them that there are more than 100 excellent water condensers in our group. I wonder how much everyone's combat strength and overall score have increased. Will there be anyone whose overall score is greater than great? If that's the case, it seems like the first place will change places. What the hell are you thinking about? Another group of people suddenly took turns to update their rankings. At this moment, William suddenly appeared. Everyone, I seem to have met with a little trouble. Chapter 136. Alice's luck isn't bad. She's in for a treat. The moment William said that, the group instantly went into an uproar. Although Klein had the highest authority in the group, William was second only to Klein. He was second in the group. He was still the god in the hearts of many people. Seeing that William was in trouble, they all asked with concern. What happened to Big Boss William? What happened? What kind of terrifying guy can actually bring trouble to Big Boss William? I can't believe it. Even Big Boss William is like this? Then won't we die directly? Stop talking. Quickly ask what kind of trouble Big Boss William is in. Yeah, I've been so worried all this time. Soon, some other people who were eager to know what happened hurriedly urged him. Ahem, I've been poisoned by the death-whispering beast. I feel very uncomfortable now. I don't have any strength at all, William said. Just now, I killed the death-whispering beast, but I found that after I finished it, my whole body was weak. I couldn't use any strength at all, and my head began to feel dizzy. Death-whispering beast? What is that? A powerful crypt creature? I know. This crypt creature is very powerful. Quite a few people in our team died at their hands. Is it that terrifying? But that's a place we have to pass through. We can't avoid it even if we think too much. For a moment, everyone fell into a panic. Everyone didn't have a deep understanding of the death-whispering beast, and they didn't know how to detoxify William. During this period, Klein had been secretly observing. He realized that no one had a deep understanding of the death-whispering beast. After confirming this, he spoke on the channel. William, don't worry. This isn't a lethal poison, but a curse. As long as you kill the death-whispering beast, you will receive this curse. After 24 hours, the curse will automatically disappear. Now, find a safe place and lie down quietly for 24 hours. It'll be fine when the time is up. Thank you, Brother Klein. I'm relieved to hear you say that. William heaved a sigh of relief. When he saw that everyone in the group was helpless about this, he had already given up. He even felt that he might directly give up here. William left the channel. Klein's appearance could be said to have once again stirred up the atmosphere in the group. Wow, Big Brother Klein actually appeared. Hurry up and hug his thigh. As expected of Big Brother Klein. He knows so much about the death-whispering beast. It seems like he's already experienced it. Big Brother Klein always walks in front of everyone no matter what. He's simply amazing. How far has Big Brother Klein gone? I feel like he's probably several catacombs ahead of us. Sigh. Klein didn't say another word. Instead, he silently watched the group chat. When the group members saw this, they thought that Klein had left the channel, so the topic changed to the death-whispering beast. What level of a crypt creature do you think the death-whispering beast is? Who cares? We have to get rid of this fellow anyway. Now that we know some information about it from Big Brother Klein, we can pay attention to it. That's good. In my opinion, we might as well beat it up when we meet. Don't think too much about it. Then, we can see if its meat is delicious. If it's delicious, we can just take it and eat it. That's fine too. By the way, I've eaten quite a lot of the meat of crypt creatures. Some of the crypt creatures do taste pretty good. I wonder how the death-whispering beast tastes like. Who knows? It probably won't do much anyway. How would you know if you don't try? Do you still need to try? You can even tell by their names. Klein was bored as well. He was quite happy to see these people arguing. At that moment, his private message rang. It was Alice. The Great Beauty had already gathered the materials for the transaction. She wanted to buy the shower from Klein. Brother Klein, I'm done. Please hurry up. I really want to take a comfortable shower. Don't worry, I'll give it to you right away, Klein said with a smile. Soon, Klein created a new shower, hung up the transaction channel, and sent the link to Alice. In just a moment, the two of them completed the transaction. I'll test the effect now. Alice went offline after saying that. She had always been obsessed with bathing, so much so that she could tolerate secondhand bath water. A few minutes later, Alice immediately replied to him via private message. The shower device is very good. It can indeed save a lot of water. There's no need to worry about bathing anymore. Thank you, Brother Klein. Oh right, there's also ice cream. Klein did some calculations. The ice cream was almost ready, so he replied to her, wait, I'll go take a look first. Yes. Alice asked curiously, does Brother Klein have a runic device that can make ice cream? Or do you already have a refrigerator? Take a guess. After Klein replied, he took the elevator to the kitchen. He opened the refrigerator's freezer. He pulled it outside. More than 10 ice cream fruits were lying quietly inside. Klein took out one. He cut it with a knife, revealing the snow-white flesh inside. Before it was frozen, it was just a lump of sticky matter. After it was frozen, it looked like a snow-white creamy ice cream. It looked like Alice was in luck. She was in for a treat. Chapter 137. A sudden situation. Klein is in danger. Woo, woo, woo. When Little Fox saw this, she looked up curiously, as though she wanted one. Wait, let me taste it first. If it's not good, I won't let you eat it, Klein said with a smile. When Little Fox heard this, she revealed an aggrieved expression. She looked very pitiful. Klein picked up a spoon and gently tasted it. It melted in his mouth. It really does taste like ice cream. It's very good. Klein passed the ice cream he had eaten to Little Fox and took out another one. He put it on the market and threw it to Alice. After the transaction was completed, they entered the tasting stage. Wow, it's ice cold. Isn't this too delicious? This is even better than the ice cream I ate in the previous world. I'll only eat half of it, leaving the remaining half for Mother, Alice replied. Mom? Klein was extremely puzzled, but he could figure it out with a little thought. Ever since he came to the catacombs world, Klein had always been alone, but for others, it might not be the case. Logically speaking, it was possible that his family had been dragged into the catacombs world. Klein cut a few ice cream cones. Little Wind and Alu tasted them all. They clearly liked the taste of ice cream cones. Alu and Lulu claimed that they had tasted them before, but they had never thought that the taste would be more unique when they were frozen. In the regional channel, everyone was chatting happily. As for the ranking, it was mentioned once again. If the reward tomorrow is a blessing buff, I feel that if I find a treasure chest, I can save it until tomorrow to open it. FCK, that makes sense. Can such a bug work? It should work, right? Klein happened to see the suggestion in the group chat and fell into deep thought. There were 4 more excavations in the afternoon. If there were treasure chests, he could indeed save them first. He rested for a while in the afternoon. Klein put away the runic base and continued digging for the day. Continued digging to the right. The 2 bronze treasure chests are shining. Be careful of the treasure chest monsters' sneak attacks. In the catacomb ahead, there are a few fruit trees waiting to bloom. In the catacomb behind, there is a silver treasure chest. The Sand Murlocs tribe is conducting a sacrificial ceremony. If you barge in recklessly, you will be treated as an enemy. Unless you intimidate them, they will swarm up and create some trouble for you. Dig down and you will enter a quicksand environment. Be careful of the strange creatures hiding underground. It's best if your feet don't fall to the ground. Dig up and there's nothing. There was a treasure chest in the direction of the 2 of them. The danger level of the bronze treasure chest was low. There was a Sand Murlocs tribe in the silver treasure chest catacomb. According to the usual practice, he would first check the living creatures. Sand Murlocs. A tribe of fishmen who walk upright. They are ugly and are considered as the 5 dregs of war. They are known for their large numbers. Even in a small tribe, there would be hundreds of sand fishmen. They worship some evil gods and often hold sacrifices, hoping that the evil gods will give them strength and courage. Bullying the weak and fearing the strong is their nature. Usually, when they meet a strong enemy, they will be defeated in an instant, even worse than the kobolds. Ability. Sand diving. Weakness. Bullying the weak and fearing the strong. Danger factor. 38. Ability check. Sand diving. Able to enter the ground at a faster speed and snorkeling for a longer period of time. The description deliberately compared the sandmen to the kobolds. Klein immediately understood. The kobolds were trash, and the Sand Murlocs were even more trash. He chose to dig backward in the next catacombs. Not long after, the passageway opened. Klein brought his 2 pets into the next catacomb. The environment before him changed. The 68th catacomb was relatively large. It spanned at least 150 meters. At a glance, the terrain was varied. There were sandy grounds, swampy grounds, and small hills. There were quite a few simple wooden huts here. They were extremely distorted, as though they could be blown down with a single blow. They must be the residences of the Sand Murlocs. There were about 30 to 40 wooden huts in total. They formed a circle. A strange tone came from inside. A priest? Klein brought the 2 small ones and quietly climbed into a wooden hut. He stood at the corner and looked inside. There were more than 100 Sand Murlocs surrounding an altar, prostrating themselves in worship. A Sand Murloc covered in colorful paint was jumping up and down in front of them, constantly muttering something. On the altar, a werewolf struggled hard and was treated as an offering. In the center of the altar, there was a stone statue that seemed to be the god they worshipped. A moment later, the Sand Murloc that was leading the sacrifice took out a small knife and cut off the werewolf's neck with a grin. Blood kept flowing down. As if it was not enough, the Sand Murloc mumbled. Soon, a group of Sand Murlocs piled up a few thin and weak of their kind on the altar. No matter how they struggled, there was no way it could escape. For the sacrificial offering, they have to kill their own kind as well. Klein's eyes darted around as he looked elsewhere. The silver treasure chest was within the encirclement of the Sand Murlocs. This group of fellows was still offering sacrifices. Klein didn't know how long they would last. If this dragged on for half a day, he wouldn't be able to take it. Just as he was weighing the pros and cons, a strange cry came from the front. So, Klein was discovered by a Sand Murloc. The situation had suddenly changed, and Klein was in danger. Chapter 138. Are you ready to receive my baptism of fire? There are humans here. A sharp voice resounded throughout the scene. A Sand Murloc pointed at Klein and shouted. This voice quickly attracted the attention of the other Sand Murlocs, especially the leader of the Sand Murlocs. His eyes suddenly flashed with a hint of savagery as he glared fiercely in Klein's direction. There's actually a human. Quickly capture him and use him as our sacrifice to Lord Evil God, so that our Sand Murlocs will have more powerful blessings in the future. The moment the leader finished speaking, the other Sand Murlocs all responded and rushed towards Klein. At that moment, faced with the sudden encirclement, Klein's brows tightened. The strength of the Sand Murlocs was very weak, and the danger factor was only 38. This didn't pose much of a threat to Klein. However, the problem was that there were a large number of them. Furthermore, they had used the encirclement tactic. Klein was dealing with so many sand murlocs by himself, so it was obvious that this round of battle was very disadvantageous to him. Even with Little Wind and Little Fox, 3 against many was still very passive. At this moment, the sand murlocs had surrounded Klein from all directions. Woo! 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 Little Fox kept calling out from the side. She looked at Klein with an appraising gaze, as though she was asking Klein to give her the order to attack. Little Wind also crawled in front of Klein and rubbed against his pant leg, expressing the same intentions as Little Fox. Don't panic. Let's take defensive measures first and observe for a while. We'll counterattack after I think of a suitable strategy, Klein said calmly. Go to hell. The sand murloc closest to Klein was already charging at him at high speed. He was holding a 1-meter-long fishbone that looked extremely sharp. You think you can hurt me? Klein sneered and snapped his fingers lightly. Instantly, a fire elemental missile charged at the sand murloc. Boom! The sand murloc was immediately surrounded by flames. Ah! Following a painful scream, the sand murloc kept rolling on the ground. Moments later, the sand murloc stopped moving. Its body was emitting a burning smell. They were dead. The other sand murlocs who had rushed over were stunned. This man is a spellcaster. The flame that came out of his hand just now killed one of our clansmen instantly. This is too scary. This guy is not an ordinary person. For a moment, the sand murlocs stopped moving, not knowing what to do. After all, they did not want to lose their lives just like that. You bunch of trash, you don't dare to go up just like that? How can you be called the descendants of the sand murlocs? Your behavior is simply unworthy of Lord Evil God's blessing on you. Seeing this, the leader cursed at the sand murlocs. Don't forget your characteristics. The leader's voice sounded coldly from behind. The originally panicking sand murlocs instantly calmed down after hearing the leader's words. Yeah, we haven't used our special characteristics yet. It's mainly because we underestimated the enemy and thought that this guy was just an ordinary person, so we underestimated him. In fact, so what if he's a spellcaster? Don't forget that we can sneak underground. Yes, as long as we can go underground, his flames won't be able to hurt us. And we can fully utilize our characteristics and pull him underground. Going underground is our home ground. We can easily kill him. At this moment, the sand murlocs regained their confidence. Looking at the man and 2 beasts, they revealed a sinister smile. Following that, the sand murlocs dove underground one after another as though they had dove into water. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared from the ground. Klein thought for a moment and said, as expected, these sand murlocs can dive underground. Are they trying to kill me in this way? Klein analyzed coldly when he saw this. Little Wind, dive underground as well. Be careful, don't engage them. Go around them and hollow out the underground for me. After you hollow it out, return to the surface and give me a hint. I'll launch an attack on these sand murlocs. Klein turned around and said to Little Wind. Little Wind nodded and listened to Klein as he dove underground. Little Wind was a pangolin, and his entire body was covered in extremely hard skin. Even if he encountered these sand murlocs, their fishbones wouldn't be able to harm him in the slightest. As for Little Fox, Klein held her in his hand and planned to leave the ground at any time. It's coming. Klein could feel a slight tremor in a radius of about 10 meters around him. Klein's eyes focused as he stepped on the ground and flew into the air. Klein had just left the ground less than 3 seconds ago. A crack instantly appeared where he had been. Following that, a large area collapsed instantly. A few sand murlocs poked their heads out of the collapsed black hole. When they saw Klein fly into the air, shock appeared in their eyes once again. And the most shocked was none other than their leader. He had been watching the battle from afar. He had thought that Klein would definitely die, but the moment he realized that Klein could fly, he was completely dumbfounded. The enemy that they sand murlocs were most afraid of was the air type. That was because they couldn't touch the other party at all. There was nothing they could do. The leader looked at Klein and said, "From the looks of it, you can leave easily." What a pity. There's one less gift for Lord Evil God. The leader's face revealed a look of unwillingness as he looked at Klein and Little Fox in his hand with resentment. Oh, when did I say that I'm leaving? In the air, Klein sneered as he looked down at the leader on the ground. What do you mean? The leader's expression darkened. Your ability is to release flames, right? But this move is ineffective against us sand murlocs. As long as we hide underground, your flames will only stay on the surface. Even if your flames are powerful, they can only affect a depth of 5 meters. And we can dive down to a depth of nearly 100 meters. There's nothing you can do about it. However, what if you can't exist underground? Klein asked back. What did you say? The leader's face suddenly revealed a look of panic. At that moment, Little Wind dug a hole in the ground and came out. He looked at Klein, who was in the air, and nodded. Seeing this, Klein directly used the bubble bead function on Little Wind. Little Wind was completely trapped in the bubble. This bubble could even withstand the high temperature of lava. It would definitely be able to withstand Klein's flames. Klein smiled coldly and said, "Then, are you ready to receive my baptism of fire?" Klein sneered and raised his right hand to the ground. Chapter 139. Get rid of the leader of the Sand Murlocs. Are you crazy? Don't tell me you think your flames can really hurt us? When the leader saw the flames appear in Klein's palm, he immediately ignored the matter of worshipping and dove underground. However, just as the leader sank underground, he discovered something that left him extremely shocked. There are many broken pieces of land underground, and these pieces of land are very unstable. Huge cracks may occur at any time, the leader cried out in surprise. The key was that there were not 1 or 2 broken pieces, but many. In other words, if it was broken, there would be many broken pieces. The entire ground would be broken. Thinking of this, the leader felt a chill down his spine. He quickly swam underground, trying to find his clansmen. However, he found that he could only move within an area and could not get out. These split points restricted him to a space. If he could get through, he could. But there was a very serious problem. If the Earth's crust shook violently in a moment, then, the area around the rift points would be subjected to tremendous underground pressure and be torn apart. And the Earth's crust movement was unknown when it would happen, so the leader couldn't take the risk. However, if he didn't look for his clansmen now, the leader wouldn't be at ease. This didn't mean that the leader cared about his subordinates. On the contrary, he didn't care. However, he was absolutely unable to deal with Klein alone. He needed his subordinates to work for him. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't leave the underground area, he would have left the catacomb long ago. The only way to leave the catacomb now was to return to the surface. However, if he went up, he would definitely be attacked by the spellcaster's flames. He would definitely die. Right now, the leader was in a dilemma. The best way was to stay underground. Clansmen, can you hear me? The leader held his breath and used the underground common language to transmit his voice through the medium of the sand. He tried to contact the members of the Sand Murloc clan. However, due to the split underground, his voice was weakened a lot. When it spread out, its volume was already much weaker. However, in just a moment, the leader heard the response of the other clansmen. "Sir Leader, where are you? We are restricted and don't dare to move at all. Countless fissure points have suddenly appeared in this underground, and it could break at any time. Sir Leader, please guide us and lead us to escape from this place. If this goes on, we will all die." The Sand Murlocs expressed their panic. The leader's mood suddenly sank to the extreme. However, at this moment, a huge tremor suddenly came from above. It was the sound of firebombing. He has started. That spellcaster has started. He has started to attack us. Oh my god, he's only releasing flames. Why does it feel like an earthquake? It's all right. We're more than 10 meters underground. His flames can't harm us at all. That's right. No matter how powerful his flames are, can they reach this deep underground? The group of Sand Murlocs clearly didn't believe that Klein's strength was that powerful. What we need to compete with him now is patience. When that fellow runs out of stamina and loses his patience, we'll return to the surface and leave this catacomb, the leader said. His words quickly gave the other Sand Murlocs sufficient confidence. Since the Patriarch had spoken, he was definitely right. The clan leader of the Sand Murlocs was the one with the strongest strength. Because in this race, strength was what they believed in. Therefore, the leader's individual strength was the strongest among all the clan members. Including its ability to judge. Everyone's hearts also calmed down. However, they didn't calm down for long. Suddenly, these Sand Murlocs clearly felt that the vibration was becoming more and more obvious. What's going on? One of the sand murlocs had just opened its mouth to speak. Suddenly, it let out a violent scream. Ah! Then, this sand murloc no longer made any sound. The other sand murlocs were all frightened when they saw this. What happened? Where's that brother? Is that brother gone? What exactly happened? Is there any brother who knows? It's too scary. He disappeared just like that. Is it that spellcaster? The leader's face was black and purple. Other than extreme anger, there was more fear. This spellcaster was much more powerful than he thought. Then, a series of screams sounded from the ground. Ah, ah, ah. Each scream was more tragic than the last. After each scream, it brought incalculable fear to the remaining sand murlocs. The leader was trembling all over. He knew that if he continued to stay down there, he would definitely die. He wanted to escape from this underground cave. Even if he had to risk being cut open, he had to escape. The leader immediately left the area where he originally stayed and passed through countless cutting points. Fortunately, these splits didn't split, so he simply increased his speed. Soon, I can see the exit. The leader was extremely excited. As long as he left this place, he wouldn't be threatened by the spellcaster. When the time came, he would definitely come back for revenge and personally kill this murderer. However, at this moment, the leader suddenly noticed that a splits beside him suddenly split open. A crack had appeared. Before the leader could react, these fissure points had split open in almost a second. The leader's entire body had suffered a huge fissure. Fresh blood gushed out. The leader let out a miserable roar. There's still a chance. It gritted its teeth and continued to swim forward. Just a little more, just a little more. Yo, the way you look right now makes me want to laugh. Klein's voice suddenly entered the leader's ears. The leader was shocked. He turned his head and realized that he had unknowingly been exposed in the air above him. The entire underground had been split open, and he had already entered Klein's field of vision. Seeing that you've worked so hard, I might as well be a good person and send you on your way. Klein sneered and snapped his fingers. Boom! A huge, scalding flame instantly pounced at the leader like a fierce tiger. There was no time to dodge. The leader was instantly reduced to ashes. All that was left was an extremely despairing howl. Chapter 140. Selling sand murloc clothes, fish clothes that can be used for swimming in the sand. Was that the leader's voice just now? Did something happen to the leader? What should we do? Why don't we leave as soon as possible? I'm so scared. Are we doomed? Can Lord Evil God save us? Some of the remaining sand murloc people were still struggling, trying to find a chance to survive, but some had already given up. 10 minutes later, the ground was completely split apart, forming countless cracks. All the sand murlocs hiding underground were dealt with by Klein, Little Fox, and Little Wind. Successfully defeated the sand murlocs. Obtained Soul +8. Such a notification appeared in front of Klein's eyes. It's finally completed. Klein moved his fingers. Although the other party had no way of resisting, Klein's fingers were still sore due to the large number of them. Let's check the harvest. Klein directly jumped underground. Little Wind and Little Fox followed Klein. These sand murlocs died in different ways. Some were burned to death by Klein. Some were torn to death by the earth's vibrations. The fish skin of the sand murloc can be used well to make clothes. The clothes can freely dive in the sand, just like swimming in water. However, you need to surface frequently to breathe. However, the number of times it can be used is limited. A coat can only be used 5 times at most. After 5 times, the fish skin loses its diving attribute. When he walked to the corpse of a sand murloc, a notification appeared in front of Klein's eyes. It can be used like this? Klein was delighted. This was a good item. Although there was a limit to the number of uses, it could save a life at a critical moment. Not only could he use it in the future, he could even make it and sell it on the market. Such an item would definitely cause a frenzy without him even thinking about it. Immediately, Klein dissected the sand murloc corpses. Sand murloc meat, 120 portions. Sand murloc skin, 36 portions. 3 portions can be made into a fish outfit, regardless of size. Sand murloc pearl, from the leader. Sand murloc pearl? Klein was suddenly attracted by the shiny pearl in front of him. This pearl was different from the bubble pearl. Its color was golden yellow. It was also very transparent. After consuming this sand murloc pearl, You will gain the ability to dive underground permanently without needing to breathe. Klein was overjoyed. He immediately put the sand murloc pearl into his mouth. He swallowed it. A few minutes later, Klein felt his body heat up slightly. An indescribable feeling appeared in his body. A moment later, the feeling disappeared. Klein suddenly realized that he could control his body to enter the ground and underground. Let's give it a try. Klein let Little Fox wait for him on the ground, then he and Little Wind entered the underground. When Little Wind saw that Klein could go underground like him, his small eyes revealed great curiosity. Furthermore, Klein didn't need to dig up the sand. He was like a fish, freely shuttling under the sand. Is this how the sand murlocs feel when they're underground? It's too awesome. After swimming underground for a few minutes, Klein felt that the experience was simply amazing. This ability could bring him great benefits in the future. For opponents that Klein couldn't deal with, Klein could pull them underground. Woo! 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 Little Fox coquettishly shouted at Klein. Klein smiled and patted Little Fox's head. Klein smiled and said, "Don't worry. I'll make you a fish outfit so that you can experience the feeling of diving underground like Little Wind." Woo! Little Fox was overjoyed as she proudly showed off to Little Wind. Little Wind looked at Klein with a wronged expression. Klein smiled and said, "Don't worry, Little Wind, you'll have it too. Although you can burrow underground, the feeling of diving is indeed very good. You can experience it." With that said, Klein smiled and patted Little Wind's head. Little Wind nodded happily. The two of them often competed for attention. It hadn't only been a day or two. Klein could only treat the two of them equally. He didn't treat either of them unfairly. After the corpses were disintegrated, Klein immediately began to make fish clothes out of the sand and mermaid skin. System notification. Fire Rune 5. System notification. Water Rune 5. System notification. Wind Rune 5. System notification. Earth Rune 5. System notification. Sand Murloc fish clothes are completed. There are a total of 12 sets. Among them, there are 2 sets of pet-sized fish clothes, one for Little Fox and the other for Little Wind. Klein kept them for the 2 little fellows and would put them on when he needed them. As for the remaining 10 sets, Klein planned to sell them on the market. As for the items to be traded, Klein thought carefully before opening the market. Item: Sand Murloc fish clothes. Inventory: 10. Effects: allows you to swim freely in the sand like a fish. Not only can you avoid the pursuit of powerful enemies, you can also relax like you're swimming. It's a rare treasure. Terms of trade: 100 fire runes, 100 water runes, 100 earth runes, 100 wind runes, something that is the most precious to you. This fish robe was very useful. Klein knew this very well. Therefore, the terms of trade he offered were very high. Otherwise, he would rather not sell it. Every minute and second, many people were paying attention to the news on Klein's trade channel. After seeing Klein hang up a new item, someone immediately noticed and shared the news with the others. Wait, what's this? Is this the fish clothing of the Sand Murlocs? What's its use? Big Boss Klein is starting to sell new items again? What's going on? Looking at the description, you can actually swim in the sand? As expected of Big Boss Klein, he's always able to show us new things. Big Boss Klein, I really want to buy this item, but the requirements for this transaction are too high. We can't afford it. Many people were very excited when they saw Klein upload the item. Most of them came with curiosity. However, although they were surprised, they were also very tempted by the fish clothes of the Sand Murlocs. However, the transaction conditions were too high. These people couldn't afford it. Therefore, many people sighed. Basically, it was loud thunder but light rain. After shouting for a long time, no one bought them. Klein was in no hurry. He knew very well that someone would definitely be able to buy the 10 fish clothes. A moment later, a new private message appeared backstage. Klein said with a smile, "The first customer is here."